Over the years, cars have seen many features that have come and gone. While some have stood the test of time due to their popularity and usage, others became outdated and were replaced by better and more practical features. Curious about what has changed? Would you still recognize these characteristics? Stay tuned to see what's changed. 1. Automatic seat belts. Automatic seat belts were a passenger restraint system mandated by U.S. federal regulations in the late 1960s to improve safety in case of accidents. They were introduced throughout the 1970s and became extremely widespread during the 1980s and early 1990s. The automatic restraints function by physically securing both the driver and front passenger when the door closed. The belts tracked along the door and B-pillar, automatically stretching across the occupant without any need to manually insert a buckle. This ensured all vehicle occupants were wearing restraints once properly seated. Automatic seat belts fell out of favor for several ergonomic and functional reasons. Their shoulder belts often cut uncomfortably across the neck, especially for taller people. The fixed tracking path also made entry and exit awkward, and many occupants didn't position the belts properly, reducing safety. Ultimately, the rapid adoption of airbags in the early 1990s allowed automakers to phase out this complex approach. Integrated buckle-based belts combined with airbags became the new standard. 2. Vent windows. Vent windows were small pivoting triangular side windows positioned in front of the main door windows. They became a common feature on American automobiles during the 1930s all the way through the 1980s, providing drivers ventilation. On a typical arrangement, each vent window was around 6 by 6 inches in size and manually cranked open on a horizontal pivot axis. This allowed fresh air from the front cowl to flow laterally into the cabin at window level, circulating air without opening the much larger main windows. Some high-end cars had power electric vent windows as well. As newer automotive designs focused on aerodynamics and air conditioning systems improved, vent windows were increasingly seen as unnecessary. Moreover, safety standards like laminated side glass and side impact protection systems reduced their prevalence. By the 1990s, most car models did away with vent windows entirely in favor of front quarter windows that only opened and closed vertically. 3. Filament bulbs. For over a century, automotive lighting utilized incandescent light bulbs with delicate metal filaments that emitted light when heated by electrical current. Headlamps, brake lights, blinkers, dome lights, and more all employed some form of incandescent bulb with varying brightness, colors, and bases. These bulbs with glowing wire filaments dominated car lighting into the 1990s. While simple and familiar, filament bulbs had significant downsides. They wasted significant electrical energy and heat generation, converting only 10 to 20% of energy to visible light. This reduced fuel economy and put a strain on outdated charging systems. Filament bulbs also took time to warm up to full brightness, which was problematic for brake lights. Additionally, their delicate glass construction made them prone to failure from vibration, and inconsistent brightness between aged bulbs increased the difficulty of maintaining properly balanced headlights. However, with the emergence of LED lighting in the 2000s, car manufacturers stopped using filament bulbs completely as LED bulbs were more efficient and less expensive. 4. Power antennas. Back in the day, most cars had antennas for radios that deployed automatically when turning on the stereo system in cars. Introduced in the early 1950s, they became widespread options or standard features on higher trim packages across most brands through the 1990s. These powered antennas used an electric motor and gear or pulley system to telescope multiple antenna sections out when the radio turned on. This could extend their length from just 6 inches up to around 40 inches. The additional antenna length dramatically improved the reception of FM radio signals compared to short fixed antennas. Some designs even automatically retracted the mast down into the fender at higher speeds. However, the motorized designs were prone to failure due to age or elements. Later audio receivers didn't require such extensive antennas anyway, due to higher sensitivity. and aerodynamic sloping windshields and integrated radio antennas also reduced demand. Nowadays, very few cars retain true power antennas. 5. Mechanical parking brakes. In the 80s and 90s, parking brakes were actuated mechanically via a hand lever or foot pedal that physically engaged brake pads or shoes against the wheels through cables, rods, or hydraulic actuators. Drivers pulled the lever or pressed the pedal to manually activate the brakes only when parking for supplementary wheel immobilization. Releasing disengaged the system. However, mechanical systems had notable downsides. Their operation was abrupt, and they required considerable force to engage fully. Cables could stretch and components wore down over time, requiring adjustment or replacement. Later, electronic parking brakes replaced mechanical approaches, now operating through electrical switchgear and motors built into the rear brake calipers. This allows automatic, seamless brake clamping at the touch of a button without compromising cabin space. 6. Ashtrays and cigarette lighters. With smoking in vehicles once extremely common, front seat ashtrays were popular features starting in early Ford models and most other cars produced through the 1980s. Deep containers were built into the doors, console, or dash, allowing convenient ash and ember disposal while driving, along with integrated cigarette lighters for self-powered ignition. Early designs employed basic metal trays with removable inserts, but even premium models came equipped with articulating ashtrays that popped open at the push of a button or slide of a cover. Later, the lighter sockets expanded to charge accessories as aftermarket adapters allowed connections to early cell phones and GPS devices. However, rising smoking restrictions, shifting social norms, and the popularity of USB charging rendered both items obsolete inside vehicles. 7. Manual crank windows. Manual roll-up windows were the norm in older vehicles, operated by a hand crank mechanism. Rotating the crank handle turned geared sprockets that raised or lowered the glass vertically within the door. This manual method provided powered window operation decades before electric variants became mainstream. However, as costs reduced and reliability improved, electric windows became mainstream by the 1990s. 8. Bench seats. Bench seats were once a norm in many older vehicles, especially those from the 1960s and earlier. Offered a continuous seating arrangement in the front of the car, unlike the individual bucket seats common today. Bench seats spanned the entire width of the car's interior, allowing for a more communal seating experience. They often provided space for 3 passengers in the front, though the middle spot wasn't always the most comfortable. As automotive design progressed, bench seats were phased out in favor of bucket seats due to the latter's superior design and safety features. While these features are now obsolete, many people still fancy them today. Which of these car features did you like, and which one did you think was a bad idea? Let us know in the comments.